I'm a pretty social guy who likes to get out and meet new people, but ever since quarantine, it's just been me, my dog, and my laptop. It can get lonely being isolated in my apartment for weeks at a time, but when I stumbled upon OnlyFans, it was the most excitement I've had since we started lockdowns. There was this girl named Sarah who I became intrigued with, and I even found her other social media accounts, which probably makes me sound like a stalker. She was charismatic, so I was curious to learn about her personality, and she was pretty active on Twitter, so I'd check her feed every day. But one week she didn't post anything, and then the next week, nothing either. Maybe she was sick of social media and decided to take a break. Soon she deleted all of her profiles, and it became clear that she wasn't coming back. Her Twitter was still up, but it had been idle for a long time. When a new post finally came up on her feed, I was expecting some kind of update, but it was just a link to a random YouTube video that had 20 views at the most. It was footage of some guy in a kitchen, and the quality was so blurry that I couldn't see his face. He stood there, pointing to his oven and laughing. Then the video abruptly ended just before he opened it to reveal what was inside. Only hours later, her Twitter was deactivated. Wherever she is, I hope she's okay. But her mysterious final post raises the question of why she would share this video and disappear. My sister and her husband live in a secluded house without any neighbors nearby, so they had a habit of leaving their doors unlocked since there was no one around for miles. But when I stayed with them for spring break, we would get an unexpected visitor in the middle of the night. I woke up sweating at 2 a.m. since my sister had cranked up the heat and I was snuggled under 2 blankets. The room was pitch black, besides the tiny bit of light radiating from the alarm clock. I tried to take one of the blankets off, but there was some kind of weight that was holding it down. At this point, my eyes were becoming adjusted to the dark, and I was able to somewhat see around the room. And that's when I noticed a shadow on the edge of my bed that looked like it was moving. My first thought was that it was my sister, but I called her name and she didn't answer. That's when I heard a deep voice say, "Hello," and I laid there in disbelief, hoping this was sleep paralysis, but I heard the man coughing and had to accept that this was actually happening. I flipped on the lights and there he was, a tall, 40-something man sitting on my bed with a dazed look on his face. It's almost like he didn't even know where he was. I was scared to provoke him, but I had to get help, so I slowly tiptoed out of the room and he didn't seem to mind. When the police arrived, they found him sleeping and drooling all over my comforter. It turns out the guy had been living in the woods by our house. He didn't have any weapons or anything like that, but it was obviously a terrifying experience, and I always keep the door to my bedroom locked. On my 16th birthday, 2 of my friends spent the night, and one of them thought it would be a good idea to bring a Ouija board, even though she knew it would freak me out. We played for the thrill of saying we tried it, but other than getting a few vague answers, nothing happened, and we got bored of it pretty fast. Since my birthday was on a school night, we couldn't do much, so we stayed in eating junk food and playing Nintendo for the rest of the night. I did feel uneasy after messing with the Ouija board, since one of the questions we asked is if there was any spirits in my house, and the board answered yes. I know it's a game and the girls were probably pushing it the whole time, but I couldn't shake the feeling and I felt scared despite being in the company of my 2 friends. I thought this was all in my head, but I later found out that my friends felt the same way and we were all a little on edge. We had taken some pictures to mark the occasion of my sweet 16, and when I put these on Instagram, my post got flooded with comments asking who the guy was in the background. I hadn't looked closely at the photos before I posted them, but I realized there was the face of an older man behind us, and when I zoomed in, I could see that he was grinning and looking directly at the camera. I was almost sure it was a reflection of the TV, but when I showed this to my mum, she was thrilled and couldn't believe her eyes. She thought this guy looked like her brother who died back in the 80s, and she did a double take on the face in the picture and said she was confident it was him. I don't know if the Ouija board had anything to do with his alleged appearance, but my mum took this as a sign that my late uncle is watching over us. It was a dumb idea, but we played again a few days later, trying to make contact with the guy in the picture. This time, the lights in the room shut off, so we noped out and put the board away. Whenever my mum talks about her brother, I go along with it, and in a way I hope she's right, but I have no desire to analyze the photographs any further. I ran a bunch of errands yesterday, and one of them entailed going to a specific company's office, which was located in a shady part of town. They had another office in a nicer area, but I'd never make it there before they closed. Since it was broad daylight, I figured nobody would try anything, and I parked in front of the place so I wouldn't have far to walk. The errand itself was no problem, but after it was handled, I made the mistake of sitting in my car with the window down while I was sending a text to my boyfriend. Before I even finished sending the text, a woman appeared at my window, and I could tell from her eyes that she was tweaked out of her mind. I don't mean to sound rude, but she weighed 80 pounds at the most, yet she started rambling about how she was in labor and that it was urgent that she gets to a hospital. Then she leans in the window so that her face is right in mine and tells me that I either give her a ride or she'll take my car and drive to the place herself. So I played along, promising that I'd take her to the hospital, and waited until she got in to start the car, hoping to prevent things from farther escalating. I headed towards the hospital, intentionally squealing the tires away from green lights, going 15 over the limit, and driving as shittily but safely as possible in hopes of getting the attention of a cop. She kept going on about a bunch of nonsense, like how she's been pregnant for 3 years and her husband doesn't want the baby. Then, in the middle of her speech, the lady demands to know why I'm going the way I am. I apologized but told her I thought she needed to get to the hospital to have her baby, and she tells me no, the baby needs food. I wasn't going to argue. I wanted to get as far away from her as possible, so I pulled into a grocery store parking lot and told her I was going to get her a soda and food for the baby. Luckily, she agreed to that, so I locked her in the car, hid behind a pillar at the front of the store, and called the police. I couldn't hear what was being said, but I could see that they were being patient with her as she was trying to kick their legs. Eventually, one of the officers approached me for my statement, told me that I did the right thing by not upsetting her, and thanking me for calling for help. As I was heading home, a bunch of ambulances were tearing down the road towards the grocery store where I parked at. I haven't seen anything on the news, and I haven't received any calls from the PD yet, but I hope everything turned out okay, and she didn't hurt herself or someone else. I hope that she gets the help she needs and wish her nothing but the best. With that said, this was the scariest experience of my life, and I hope that I never see the woman again.